at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We gotta unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped. Enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the Dean Obeidallah Show. We're live right here, Monday, June 24th. I'm Dean Obeidallah, as always, needy as hell, hoping to be your MBFF. On Twitter, at Dean Obeidallah. Drop me an email, dean@deanaradio.com. Even if you're conservative, some Trumper email me goes, you can't believe the things you're saying about Trump. There's no way you believe that. I'm like, I believe all of it. In fact, I would say even crazier things, but I don't want to get knocked off the air. So it's so funny when they don't believe that what I'm saying, like this is an act. Like I actually, I'm okay about Trump. No, he's horrible. And the beginning of the end is in sight. We are now 498 days away from the most important election of our lives. But first, Wednesday and Thursday, the debates. And I'm excited about them. I hope you are as well. I don't know if they're going to be overhyped. And keep in mind, with 10 candidates a night, just 2 hours of airtime, plus commercials and little statements, each candidate may only speak for 8 or 9 minutes in each hour. It's not going to be like the past 2016 when it was Hillary and Bernie and they both spoke for 45 minutes each. This might be very limited, so we might expect a lot more than we actually see, but I'm looking forward to it. And as Michelangelo Signorelli just said, he'll be down there Wednesday and Thursday night in Miami. He'll be in the spin room. He'll be covering it. It's going to be exciting. We're going to talk to him before the debates, both nights a little bit, tell us what's going on, what he's seeing. And then right after the debates, tune back in. Jorge Olivares will be sitting in here hosting, and I'm sure Michael's going to call in, and others. Maybe I'll call if they want me on. I'm happy to be part of it, but we are looking forward to it. So to me, here's the big issue of the day that I feel so compelled to talk about. And I'm not being hyperbolic when I say this. I'm not being intentionally provocative. I'm telling you exactly what I feel. We need the United Nations to investigate the Trump regime for human rights violations concerning the way they've imprisoned children in horrific conditions on our southern border. We actually need the UN to get involved. I'm not kidding. And I'll make the case for exactly why and how that gets done. Because this really falls into their mandate. And the facts of what we're seeing demand this. Because Trump doesn't care about the law, folks. He doesn't care about any of the law. He doesn't care personally. He's violated the law in the past. He's violated Federal Election Commission laws, emoluments violations, obstruction of justice. He's never been held accountable. So the fact he's violating the law here with these children mean nothing to the guy. Because he's a criminal. Criminals don't care about the law. Hence, criminals. And the Democrats should be doing a much better job on this. They should be making this such a bigger issue. They should be having press conferences about this, bringing attention. This is heartbreaking. It's horrific. It is a human rights violation. It is close to a crime against humanity. And I'll make the case for that from a legal point of view in a few minutes. Give me a few minutes on that, and I will make that case for you about why this is not just a minor thing or a slightly bad thing. This is potentially a violation of international law rising to the level of a crime against humanity. And that's defined by international law. It's not frivolously throwing that around. So what we do know is in the last 8 months, 6 children have died in U.S. custody or shortly right after custody. And the first child in this timeline died in September, late September 2018. We only found out about the death of that 10-year-old El Salvadorian girl a few weeks ago when CBS broke the story. So the Trump administration covered that death up, meaning there could be more than 6 children who died in the last 8 months. We have no idea. We don't know the answer to that question. Even Congressman Joaquin Castro was on and used the term cover up because we don't know what's going on with these guys. They've separated children from parents. Federal courts have required them to give information on where the children are and where the parents are. They have no idea where the children are because they never took them with an eye to returning them. They took them with an eye to sending a message down to El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras that if you bring your children up here, we're going to take your kids away. So don't come up here. That was the whole goal. That was their admitted goal. It was punitive. It was to send a message. Zero tolerance. That's what it's all about. And when you hear about 6 children dying in the last 8 months, you might ask yourself, well, when's the last time a migrant child died in the custody of the United States government? Like during the Obama administration, was it frequent or not? When was it? The last time a child died before September 2018 in U.S. custody, a migrant child, was 10 years ago. None during Obama. Zero during Obama. Zero. This is all Trump. This is all Trump. Trump does not care about the law. He does not care about human rights. And I want to explain, because just so we're all on the same page and you understand legally, some of you do know about this, some might not, called the Flores Agreement. And I will explain this as a human being, not as a lawyer to you, because it's the basis for the way we're supposed to treat migrant children. It was a consent order, consent decree between the federal government and in a class action lawsuit. So let me give you a little short primer on that. Then we'll get into the most stunning, vile garbage that we're hearing yesterday and over the weekend and late last week from the Trump administration and from people who went down to the camps and saw what's going on. And if you want to call them concentration camps, I don't care. I don't care what word you use to describe them. They're horrific. They're vile. So in 1997, the U.S. government reached this agreement in a class action lawsuit. It was a case called Flores versus Reno. It was a California case. So 1987, lawsuits filed in 1997, they reached this agreement. In this agreement, the federal government has promised that when they're going to detain children who are migrant kids coming in and they're the custody of, at the time, INS, which is now gone, but the Department of Homeland Security, and DHS, the Department of Health and Human Services, they have to treat these children a certain way. And it's laid out exactly the way they're supposed to treat them. This is the government, the federal government has made this promise. And it's been essentially memorialized and enforced by our courts for years and years. That says children must be placed in the least restrictive setting appropriate to the child's age and special needs. It talks about providing notice of rights. Also, this is a very important term. You're going to hear a lot about this term when I play some clips. They must have the kids kept in place that are safe and sanitary facilities. They must be safe and sanitary. That is such a key term, and we're going to talk about a lawsuit that's going on in federal court. Remember, safe and sanitary. So other things such as drinking water and food, we're obligated. We're obligated to give them medical assistance and temperature control. This is all under the consent decree. This is not just international law, what we're supposed to do for asylum. This is our own consent decree. Federal government has agreed to it, and that continues on. It's not specific to any one president. It's a binding agreement between the federal government to resolve the class action lawsuit. So now what we're learning is just off the charts. It's horrific. It is a human rights violation. And let me just have, Warren Binford is a lawyer. She's a law professor. She went down to the border last week with other lawyers who were going down there to see the children, what's going on, and report on it. She's gone down there for years. And I want you to listen very closely to her today on CNN with Jim Sciutto, talking about what she saw, what's going on with the kids, and how stunning this is. Here's clip number one.
As an eyewitness, tell us what you saw there, the conditions. How severe were they?
They were the worst conditions that I've ever seen in the United States of America, and the fact that it was children who were being treated this way, who are literally being warehoused in a Lord of the Flies scenario where there's no direct adult supervision. They're having to take care of each other. Children described as many as 300 in a room in the warehouse. We have children who are being kept in cells where they are sleeping on concrete floors. There are as many as 25, 50, 60 children in these cells with open toilets in the middle. They're having to eat in these cells. They're having to defecate in these cells. The children are sick. There's an influenza outbreak in the facility. There's a lice infestation in at least one of the cells. And the children are being forced to care for one another because there's no one caring for them there.
That is being done in your name. That is being done in my name. That is being done in the name of the United States of America by our government, by this Trump regime. It's not an administration, it's a regime, like the North Korean regime or the Iranian regime. This is not a presidential administration. This is a regime that's engaging in human rights violations, things that you would read about in a third world or another country, and you'd say, wow, the UN should get involved. Well, same response today. Then Warren Binford, the lawyer, was asked by Jim Sciutto, why is this happening? And listen carefully. Here's clip number two, please.
I tend to think the best of people, so I would hate to imagine that someone would literally torture, abuse, and neglect these children for political purposes. So I'm not going to go there. What I can tell you is that there is a massive mismanagement of the system that's been set up to care for these children. Almost all of these children have family in the United States who are ready and willing and want to take care of them. They have loving homes and they can care for these children. America doesn't need to take responsibility for these children. All it needs to do is get these children to their families. Instead, what we're seeing is that these children are being warehoused in Border Patrol facilities that are so dirty, so filthy, and so unsanitary that children are literally dying. We've seen about a child die per month in these conditions. And so now what we're seeing is that the children are being kept there for weeks at a time instead of a number of hours, which is all they're supposed to keep the children there, a maximum of 72 hours. After they leave these facilities, they're supposed to be transferred into ORR custody, where they are supposed to be reunited with their families within a maximum of 20 days. We're not seeing that. What we're seeing instead is that these children are being kept for 9 months or longer.
So her choice of words is very interesting. The lawyer there is a law professor, used the term torture. And she said, I'm not saying they're torturing intentionally, that the Trump administration. Torture is, and the reason she brings up torture and is very specific, we'll get into it in a few minutes. Under international law, that is a crime against humanity. So this is what's happening here. The way she's doing it, she's laying out the case here and just putting that out there for people to think about this. And I'm hoping that the UN is paying attention to what's going on. So these are horrific conditions going on. There's no doubt about it. You have kids, 25, 50 kids, as she describes, with an open toilet that they defecate there and in front of each other. There's disease going on. They're eating in the same place. They're defecating. There's flu. There's lice. This is all done by our government in our name. This is what's going on. Donald Trump will declare an emergency to get funding to build a wall, but won't declare an emergency to help children. Because to him, they're not humans, folks. That's why 6 children died in 8 months. We had none die in 10 years. Because Donald Trump has painted these kids and their parents as invaders, as thugs, as criminals, as people you don't care about. So if they cry or they sneeze or they need medical care, you don't care. Because you're conditioned, like in dark times in history. I wouldn't have to name it, but you know what I'm talking about, where people are not human beings anymore. And then you can do anything you want to them. If you no longer look at the person as a human, there's no limits to what you might do to them. That's how the darkest days of history has happened. How did good people get misled so badly? And you'll hear more, another example right here, because this is horrific what's going on. But the Trump administration literally wants more freedom to do worse things to these kids. And you might be saying, how? Legally, they are arguing in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the Department of Justice, to allow themselves to have more freedom to make these kids suffer more without beds and toothpaste and soap. And we'll play some clips. First of all, here's the federal judge before the Ninth Circuit. So there's 3 judges. The first judge, William Fletcher, just talking about the conditions the kids are going on. And he's looking at the record from the district court judge, because in the district court is where the fact finding goes on. They hear testimony. Federal court just looks at the record. Here's the federal judge talking about what the district court found. Clip number 3, please.
The testimony that the district judge believed was, it's really cold. In fact, it gets colder when we complain about it being cold. We're forced to sleep crowded with the lights on all night long. And all you do put us on is the concrete floor with an aluminum blanket. I mean, I understand at some outer boundary there may be some definitional difficulty, but no one would argue that this is secure and sanitary, safe and sanitary. Or at least I don't think you're arguing that, are you?
Your Honor, I think what I'm arguing is that the way that the district court reached the conclusion was to say these specific items, and I think I will acknowledge, I think sleep is the more difficult end.
All right. And so the lawyer there you heard was Sarah Fabian, who is a lawyer for the Department of Justice. And safe and sanitary is the buzzwords. That's what you're hearing, because that's in the Flores Agreement. And that's essentially the law agreed to by the federal government and how they were going to treat these kids, safe and sanitary. That's what you're going to hear judges say. I'm going to play 2 more clips from this. You actually had that judge painting a picture where the kids are sleeping on the ground. They're freezing. They're freezing. They have aluminum blankets on top of them. They're sleeping on the ground, on a cement ground. That's what the trial judge found. There's no one disputing that. And then Here is the lawyer, clip number 4, arguing that the sleeping conditions are fine.
You're really going to stand up and tell us that being able to sleep isn't a question of safe and sanitary conditions?
Your Honor, I think what I'd like to stand up and say is to focus the court on what the question is. Any number of things might fall under those categories, and I think
yes, but sleep surely does, right? You can't be safe and sanitary or safe as a human being if you can't sleep.
Well,
and you said in your briefs it doesn't say anything about sleeping, so therefore there's nothing in here about being able to sleep.
I think the concern there is, Your Honor, the court finding that sleep, for example, is relevant to a finding of no safe and sanitary conditions is one thing, but the ultimate conclusion is safe and sanitary is a singular category in the agreement, and it was one has to assume left that way and not enumerated by the parties because either the parties couldn't reach agreement on how to enumerate that, or that it was left to the agencies to determine.
Or it was relatively obvious, and it's at least obvious enough so that if you're putting people into a crowded room to sleep on a concrete floor with an aluminum foil blanket on top of them, that doesn't comply with the agreement.
So there's the lawyer saying, well, and this is a Trump lawyer, folks. This works in the Department of Justice, Bill Barr, Donald Trump's lawyer there. And she's arguing that safe and sanitary does not include a bed because, as I read to you, the Flores Agreement had certain things that's outlined. Safe and sanitary is a key term. She's saying a bed is not safe and sanitary. And the judge goes, you've got to be kidding us. Safe and sanitary, a bed would be assumed. And she goes, well, no, maybe it wasn't enumerated or written out in detail because the parties couldn't agree on it. Any human being who's from this planet would understand that safe and sanitary would include a bed, that you don't sleep on a cement floor as a child. And these rules are just for children, by the way, folks. We're dealing with children. These are not adults. These are just the kids. This is all we're dealing with. So everything you're hearing about is with children only. I want to make that very clear. And the last thing is the Trump administration not only doesn't want to give them beds, they want to not have to give them soap or toothbrushes. Can you believe that? And you'll hear this discussion right here. The judge can't believe it either. Clip number 5.
It's within everybody's common understanding that, if you don't have a toothbrush, if you don't have soap, if you don't have a blanket, it's not safe and sanitary. Well, wouldn't everybody agree to that? Do you agree to that?
Well, I think there's fair reason to find that those things may be part of safe and sanitary.
Maybe are a part. What do you say maybe? But you mean there are circumstances when a person doesn't need to have a toothbrush, toothpaste, and soap for days?
Well, I think in CBP custody, it's frequently intended to be much shorter term. So it may be that for a shorter term stay in CBP custody that some of those things may not be required.
Yeah, but I don't think that was the situation that the court was confronting. I mean, it wasn't as though those people were there for 12 hours and then moved on to the Hilton Hotel. No, they were there for a fairly sustained period.
And that's the very point the lawyer made earlier, Warren Binford from CNN, who said these kids are supposed to be there for a matter of hours. They're there for up to 9 months. CBP is Customs Border Patrol. That's what they reference CBP. What's going on here is the Trump administration arguing now that children, safe and sanitary, is not giving them a bed, not giving them a toothbrush, not giving them toothpaste. That's not safe and sanitary. That's inhumane. That is a crime against humanity, the way of treating children like that. No one would be treated like that. No child anywhere would want their child treated like that. And no government anywhere should treat a child like that. And it's being done in your name. What do you think about it? Your name, my name, all of our names collectively? The world is watching this. Because CNN and MS are not covering it tonight doesn't mean the world's not, because the world is. This is getting press around the world, what's going on again, the family separation thing and this. And Mike Pence was on with Jake Tapper yesterday and asked about this. And listen to Mike Pence's response. Listen to how much he cares about the kids. Listen to how much this good Christian man, his heart pains for the children. I'm kidding. He doesn't talk about that at all. He just blames the Democrats. Here you go. Here, clip number 6.
Aren't toothbrushes and blankets and medicine, basic conditions for kids, aren't they a part of how the United States of America, the Trump administration, treats children?
Well, of course they are, Jake.
Well, the lawyer was arguing the opposite.
I can't speak to what that lawyer was saying. Yeah. It's one of the reasons we asked for more bed space.
Right.
When we were negotiating with Congress.
Money, yeah.
No, when we were negotiating during the government shutdown.
Oh, okay.
And Democrats in Congress refused to expand the bed space and the capacity for us to detain people.
This is going on right now.
Borders. It's one of the reasons why we continue to call on Congress to give DHS, Customs and Border Protection, additional resources at the border. But
this is the wealthiest nation in the world. We have money to give toothpaste and soap and blankets to these kids in this facility in El Paso County right now.
Of course we do.
So why aren't we?
My point is, it's all a part of the appropriations process. Congress needs to provide additional support to deal with the crisis at our southern border. But we've got to get to the root causes. We've got to close the loopholes.
Close the loopholes, my friends. Close the loopholes. To him, these little brown kids are nothing more than loopholes. They're not human beings because they're brown kids. Mike Pence tells us he's such a great Christian, yet he's never read the Bible. I mean, clearly Matthew 25:35-40 says, "For I was hungry and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger and you invited me in. I needed clothes and you clothed me. I was sick and you looked after me." But not to Mike Pence. Mike Pence uses Christianity for one thing, to discriminate and demonize against the LGBT community. That's what Mike Pence's Christianity is about. It's not the Christianity that Christians know. It is Mike Pence's twisted, perverted version of Christianity. It's despicable. And Trump was on Meet the Press, and I won't play that stupid guy's voice for you here, said the exact same thing about if the Democrats would change asylum laws and the loopholes. So that's their talking point. Children suffering are loopholes. He goes, if they change the loopholes, but they refuse to do so. The Trump administration's got billions of dollars. He declared an emergency to build a wall. Why wouldn't he declare emergency to help these kids? That was really the issue. And it's not the issue. They have money. That's not the issue. Do they want more beds for the future? That's fine, but that's not what you're talking about here. Mike Pence didn't make an impassioned plea as a father, as an American, as a human being that these kids need this care. Democrats are holding it up. He called them loopholes. This is what's going on in your name. This is what's going on, and the world is watching this. And when the family separation policy happened in June of last year, the UN, the High Commissioner for Human Rights, called for a change in policy, saying that the policy separating children from migrant families entering the U.S. violated international law. And how did the U.S. respond? Nikki Haley, who was UN ambassador at the time, said this: "Once again, the United Nations shows its hypocrisy by calling out the United States while it ignores the reprehensible human rights records of several members of its own Human Rights Council," adding, "Neither the United Nations nor anyone else will dictate how the United States upholds its borders." That was Nikki Haley speaking for Trump, that we don't care about human rights violations. This is our border. We're going to do what I want. And there is international law, and crimes against humanity are defined. And I'll give you definitions right here. One is torture. The other is imprisonment or other severe deprivation of physical liberty in violation of fundamental rules of international law, or other inhumane acts of similar character, intentionally causing great suffering or serious injury to body or to mental or physical health. 6 children died in the last 8 months. We have children sleeping on the floor, sharing a common bathroom of 25 to 30 in a room. Lice, influenza. There's no adult supervision. As you heard the lawyer say, it's like Lord of the Flies. This is a crime against humanity. And it's being done in our name, with our tax dollars, by Donald Trump. And the Democrats should be talking about this a lot more. They should make this an issue, but in their own calculations, maybe they have their own calculations. No, we can't talk about this. And Speaker Pelosi called Trump on Friday, and whatever deal she made, I have no idea if it involved impeachment or not. Trump pulled back from his mass deportations he was going to start on Sunday. I wish this was part of it, that they were going to change these rules. This is where we are. Now, the House did roll out a bill on Friday to increase funding that the Trump administration did want of about $4 billion. At least the House bill has conditions for that funding, including better conditions for these children. The Senate bill doesn't have that. It means it'll never pass the Senate. But here's where we are. What do you think about this? Do you think the Democrats should be talking about this more? What should we be doing about calling out this inhumanity, this callousness, this cravenness? This is what defines the United States today. This is what the country stands for. There was kids outside of Geneva, outside of the World Court there, recently, teenagers there, they're not American, they're foreign, who put themselves in cages to call the UN, to call the International Court to get involved. here in America. And the International Court should get involved. And the UN should get involved. In fact, they wanted to. They asked for investigations. They want to go down to the border and inspect. The Trump administration said no to the UN twice so far to go down and inspect. They don't even want the UN to inspect what they're doing. They won't let the media in. Members of Congress have a tough time getting in. Is this the United States or are these gulags from the Soviet Union? You know, AOC called them concentration camps. I'm not sure what the right term is. How about inhumane, un-American, vile? Trump. They're just Trump. And this is what Trump is. This is the cancer of Trumpism right in front of us, right here with these children, these innocent kids who've done nothing, who've came with their parents for a better life. So, all right, let's take a break. I'd love to hear from you. We'll be right back after this. At this point, the question is not who connected to Donald Trump as a criminal. The question is anyone connected to Donald Trump who's not a criminal?